Greetings, students, and welcome to chapter number 7 for nutrition. So let's go ahead and talk about something that some of you have already, made aware to me is something you've struggled with in the past or continue to struggle with or have concerns about. And that is going to be basically our weight management. And of course, food plays a very big role in our weight management and whether we are in what we would consider a normal weight range or in a range that's overweight or a range that is underweight. So let's talk about that. All right, so talking about our body weight and health, and here is the 3 kind of different categories that we have concerns about. So if somebody is underweight, there's concerns with that, right? And we live in a very thin focused society here in the US, unlike other parts of the world. And so a lot of times, especially our young girls, are pressured to be in this ultra thin category, which again has some health consequences. So we're not looking for that. We don't want to encourage that. We want our kids and our individuals to be in a normal health weight range. Being overweight is again a concern, and then definitely being obese is something that we'll talk about too. So what is your BMI? Again, for those of you who have taken me for human development, you should probably be aware of some of the information we're going to talk about here. Your body mass index, or your BMI, is basically a number that we get when we consider or we look at your height and your weight together, right? So we're going to factor those 2 things to determine what weight category you fall into. For instance, if somebody describes their friend to me and says that, they're weighing in at 220 pounds. Well, unless I know how tall the individual is, I can't really determine if 220 pounds is in a normal range, which it may be for someone who's 6'3", right? But for someone who's 5'2", being 220 pounds might be definitely in that overweight or obese category. So that's why we take a measure of your height and your weight. And so let's look at what that looks like. As you can see from this slide, you're going to find your height down the left-hand column here, and then you're going to go across where it says BMI when we have the numbers on the top scale and find, what your number is according to your weight. So for instance, I would be in this, 5'2" height range. And then my weight would probably be around here in the 125 to 127 category. And I've really had to work to keep it there because of being over 50. Our body goes through some changes when we get older. And so, but here I am. And so if I go up, I would see that my BMI number is 23 or 24. Somewhere in this range. And again, this would be in something that we consider to be healthier for you, a normal category, although I don't like the word normal, but a healthier category for you. And then if you were looking at your weight and you said, maybe I'm at the 150 weight range at 5'2", you would be looking more at the 28 BMI. And then if you, again, were over in the 175, maybe for being 5'2", you weighed 175 pounds, you would be at a BMI of 31, and this would be in the obese category. I do caution people, don't look at this chart and freak out. If you say, here I am, here's my height, here's my weight, they're telling me I'm in the obese or the overweight category, and I really don't feel like that. I caution you because all of us have different body structures, right? Genetically, we are all, made a little bit different depending on your parents and all of those things. So some of us are what I think of as thicker than others. Some of us have a heavier bone structure. We have thicker bones, right? And so I'm going to say, if that weight is not maybe adipose tissue or fat, then that's a little different than what we're talking about here, which is really your weight in terms of what we'll say is adipose tissue or your visceral fat. All right, so let's talk about this. This is a concern. Our incidence of obesity in the US. So obesity comes with a lot of health risk. Okay, so again, obesity would be classified as individuals who are not overweight, but they're beyond overweight, okay? Very concerning for our health. Can lead to issues such as gallbladder disease, sleep apnea, arthritis, because again, you have extra weight on your bones and on your joints, so you could then get arthritis. Obesity has lots of different health consequences. Diabetes, heart disease, all of those different things are a concern when we talk about being obese. And this is one of the reasons why we're trying to manage or target people who are obese so that we can prevent those future health complications is what we're concerned about. America's obesity epidemic, because back in my grandmother's generation, right, 100 years ago, there weren't a lot of individuals that had obesity. We didn't have the proportion of Americans that have obesity today, 100 years ago. And why is that is the question. And we see here the primary cause is that we as Americans tend to overeat, so we're consuming extra calories, and we don't do any physical activity. So we exercise less than our forefathers did, and we eat more than our forefathers did. And this is what is leading to this epidemic, meaning it's health concern, huge health concern in our nation. And if you look at this slide, it's really interesting because the slide is telling us the proportion of individuals that have obesity. And if we look here, we're concerned about our southwestern or southern states in the orange, because, you know, these states are looking at 30 to 35%, almost, you know, over maybe 40% of their population is in that obese category. That's a concern. Nationwide, we're at about 30% or more of all Americans being obese, not overweight, just obese. So that's a concern. Here we are, most of us in California here, and you know, we're at the 20 to 25%, but that's still talking about a quarter of our population that is in the obese category. And so this is becoming an epidemic. For those of us who are interested in public health and in, you know, trying to help the community as far as being healthier, this is a concern. This is a really, really big concern. So this is where we are with obesity, and that's why we're going to talk a little bit about it. All right, so Americans, we eat more, flat out. We just eat more calories than we need. So we'll talk about the difference between appetite and hunger. So a lot of us, we know that, you know, you get hungry, right? If you don't go for food, if you don't consume food for some time, what happens? Your belly is going to start to tell you something. You're going to hear these grumbling noises. You kind of feel it. It's going to say, you need to feed me. I'm really, really hungry. I'm beyond, right? You should have fed me already, right? And so that's really our hunger, our body telling us we need to eat. Your appetite can be based on a lot of different things. As we've kind of mentioned before, emotional eating or comfort eating is a huge thing now that we're dealing with. And so that's really more of your appetite. Your appetite is, what are you craving, right? When you feel, you say, you know I had lots of pasta for lunch, but, you know, I'm just craving pizza for dinner. I want more carbs, lots of carbs. And that's our appetite. Our appetite is, what are we craving? What time are we craving it, right? The midnight snacks, the 1 a.m. meals, all of those different things are probably not healthy for you. Well, they're not healthy for you. At those times, we can have some healthy snacks. We can talk about at those times, but not unhealthy snacks. And then our portion sizes. Oh my goodness, look at this slide here. So looking at 40 years ago and looking at today, this is what your kind of average meal looked like from Burger King. And look at the difference. So the drink, our soft drink, has increased in size by 62%. Right? So sometimes when you go to the fast food window or the drive-up line, right, and they say, your meal's a small, would you like a medium? And you're thinking, well, gee, maybe as small as like a tiny cup, and okay, I'll get a medium, upgrade to a medium. And you go to check out and they hand you the size medium cup, and it's like 32 ounces. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like a half a gallon. How is this a medium? Right? And that's what we're saying, is that they have really increased the size of the soft drinks that we're getting. Our French fries, the size, look at the fries on the plates. The size of our portions of French fries is grown by, you know, over 50%, 57%. And then our actual cheeseburger has grown by almost a quarter, 24%. Right? So this is what your meal looks like. And the thing is, we don't need to eat that much for one serving. We don't. And that's where we're getting into problems. So this is the issue with going out to eat. So anytime you go out to the restaurant, our American portion sizes are just huge. Right, your place, that's why they all have calories on the menu, because we're finding out that you're going for one meal and you're eating 1,200 calories in one meal, 700 calories in a meal. So look at the calories there, but you typically can't finish your food because they have so much food on a plate, which is why you should be looking at, sharing plates, ordering with someone, or getting the lighter fare menu at the restaurants, right, which are smaller portions and healthier portions, because we are just feeding people more food, which is more calories than we need. And so this is something that we see going on, right? How that excess, those excess calories really affect our health. So when our fat nutrients, when we consume or eat more than we need, right? So if remember we said we need about 35% of our calories from fat a day. So when we're eating more than that, we're getting more than that, what happens is the body is going to store that fat in the form of triglycerides, and it's going to put it in what we call adipose tissue. So adipose tissue is kind of, it's the fat that we have on our body that is an excess, and it forms our shape and all of that. But think of maybe if you had someone that's very large, or for many of us, it's our rolls, right? That's your adipose tissue. It's not muscle. It's not any of your organs. It's kind of rolls of fat, and that's adipose tissue, and it's going to create excess amount on our body here. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, right? So how do we kind of, deal with when should we stop eating, or how do we manage that? So satiety is referred to as this feeling that we have when we eat they say you eat a nice good meal and then you feel full, right? This is not when you overeat, right? So when we overeat, when we stuff too much into our stomach, it's not really a comfortable feeling, right? We'll talk about heartburn and other things that can happen because now you've overstuffed your stomach. But we're talking about you eat a nice, good meal and you feel full and satisfied. There's no more hunger. There's no more need to continue to consume calories, right? That is satiety. And that's what we want. We want to feel that way after our meals so that we have that feeling of, I don't need to eat anymore, right? Energy stores in the body. So when we, again, consume more calories, eat more food than we need, the body stores it for later. And the way it does that is it stores it in two forms, in the form of glycogen and triglycerides, right? Glycogen for our carbohydrates there, and then triglycerides for our fat. And so the body is going to store it for our in-between meal needs. After digestion, what happens is the energy, remember every time we eat food, metabolism occurs, and it kind of has those chemical reactions that are going to process that food. And through that processing, we're going to get energy. And we need energy for everything here. So our foods or our nutrients are going to be converted to what we call ATP, which is this energy. And we'll talk about what that energy then does for us in our bodies. Okay? You can read about the different life changes and what we need as we go on. So let's look at how the location of our body fat really affects us and our health risk. So again, we said when we consume extra calories, we get this extra what we call adipose tissue or body fat. Where that body fat is stored, though, plays a huge role in whether or not it's harmful. In general, I'm going to say that it is better to be shaped, when we look at our figure or our shape, as a pear than as an apple. And here's the reason why. If we look at this picture here, the gentleman on the left-hand slide is shaped like an apple, meaning most of the extra fat that this person is carrying is centered around the waist, around your circumference of your waist, the middle area. So therefore, we think of it as an apple, right? Shaped like an apple. When we have that extra weight that we carry in those areas, it really affects our heart. They pretty much say every inch of excess fat is a year shaved off of your lifespan, right? And so we need to be concerned about that apple shape because that extra fat is being carried in the middle area. Now, if we look at the pair, or we look at the females on the other slide, we see that they are shaped a little bit more like a pear style, which really means carrying your extra weight in your hips and in your rear end, right? Your thighs. That means that your waist may be smaller or normal, and then we get out to being a little bigger on the bottom half, and so therefore we get what we think of as the pear shape. All right, and so this would be healthier, because in this sense, what's happening really is a lot of this weight is just kind of being housed or stored, and it's not putting the pressure as the visceral fat does on the organs of the heart and lungs and all of that in the middle area. Instead, it's in the lower area, and it doesn't carry the same health consequences as being shaped like an apple does. Okay. In general, we want to limit our excess body weight, right? That's just in general. However, it is much better to be shaped like a pear than to be shaped like an apple. So this is where, if you are kind of in that apple category, or you have loved ones who are in that apple category, you know, we need to start talking about how to reduce that or change that body shape, because it would be healthier for them. Right. So again, your waist circumference and your health risk, that's what we're talking about here, gives you some numbers. But basically, when we look at that, what I said was visceral fat. It's that fat that is around the waist area. What we know is that leads to increased risk for heart disease, diabetes, and breast cancer. Right. And so those are some really, really good reasons to be looking at, how do I manage that? Right? So if that's your situation or your loved one's situation, how do we work on that? Right? Energy balance, think of the scales of balance. For all of us, this is what we want. We want to have energy in, which means eating, right? Our calories from our food, our nutrients, is our energy in. And then the energy out would be the activities that we do throughout our day. And we want to be at a level balance, right? We want to be eating or consuming the right amount of food or calories for our level of activity. And that's what we'll kind of look at here. So how do we figure out or estimate our energy content in food? Like, in other words, how many calories am I getting from what I'm eating? Well, if you look at this slide, it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about here in nutrition, which is understanding how many kcals we get per gram of the macronutrients. So 15 grams of protein, I'm going to multiply my protein times 4, right? 4 kcals per gram, and I get 60 calories. 50 grams of carbohydrate, multiply that times 4, right? And I get 200 calories. And then I take my 10 grams of fat and I multiply that times what? Times 9, right? Because our fat equals 9 kcals per gram, and I get 90. So what that shows me is that for this one slice of pizza, if I knew my numbers, if I knew how many grams of protein, fat, and carbohydrates were in it, I could figure out it equals 350 calories per slice, right? Depending on your toppings and all those different things, right? So kind of just, again, figuring out like how much is in the food that you're eating. This is talking about, again, as I said, ATP is important, because ATP is the energy that we get from the chemical reactions that break down our nutrients in our food. I'm not going to go through having you memorize this process and understand everything. However, you need to kind of realize that this is what we want. We want our food to convert to energy through this ATP process. So energy. So, you know, we're talking a lot about energy. Like, what does that mean? So when we talk about this total energy expenditure, what we learn is that for all of us, there's 3 different ways that we use our energy from our food. The first one is what we call basal metabolism. So basal metabolism means the minimum amount of energy required to maintain vital functions at complete rest. Basically, what it means that if you are sleeping or you are sitting down at a desk, how much energy does your body need to make your heart pump, to make your lungs go, to make your brain function? How much energy is your body requiring just to maintain all of the functions that go on, the amazing things that happen within us? That is your basal metabolism, okay? Then we have physical activity. right? So if you are someone who's very active, well, we need more calories to burn off in order to be very active. If you're someone moderately active, then we need that many more calories, right? So your physical activity, we need more energy to do the physical activity. And then what we call TEF, or this kind of diet-induced thermogenesis. Thermogenesis means this heat that we generate. And so it's the amount of energy expenditure above that basal metabolism, right? So it's the energy that our body's really kind of going to save for when we need to do extra things. And so these three things are what you need to understand. All of us use up every day, and this is what our food is giving us. It's giving us the ability, the energy needed to accomplish all three of these. Therefore, if we're lacking in calories, we're going to have a concern with not meeting the needs of one of these three, right? Right, and here we see activity in that total energy requirement, for somebody who is what we call sedentary, which means you really don't move much. Maybe you have a job where you sit at a desk all day, or you just are not very physically active. We see here kind of what's required for everything. Somebody who is physically active, and then someone who's very active. Well, we need more calories, right? For each of these three stages, you can see the increase in the number of calories that the person needs to consume or eat. So we said basal metabolism is the energy that your body needs just to maintain itself, just to work right while you're sitting or sleeping or doing nothing. And that means, believe it or not, we're using up about 60 to 75% of our total energy expenditure just for that. It takes a lot of energy just to make your body work, just to make it do what it needs to do for your, gallbladder to work, and your liver and your kidneys, and for them to do the jobs that they need to do. Think of it, when you have a car, you've got to give it the gas, right? You've got to fill it up and all of that. And so while you're sitting there doing nothing, you're not necessarily eating. Therefore, the food or the meal you had prior should have been able to meet the needs of your basal metabolism. All right, body energy. So when weight loss occurs, what happens is our body is going to take the extra calories or energy and store it for later, right? Because it's like, well, we're not using it. When weight gain occurs, so when we increase our weight gain, we build up the stores that we need into, remember, the adipose tissue or the extra fat that maybe we shouldn't have because we're gaining weight. Okay, so to provide glucose to the body, because we said glucose is a major nutrient that the body needs, and that's broken down through our carbohydrates. And so that glucose is needed, and what happens is the body is going to go ahead and say, all right, so in between meals, I need to go ahead and take that glycogen that I had in the storage facility, right, that I banked it kind of like, take it out, and I need to use it in between meals while we're eating here, because your body's going to constantly need that glucose. So your body is constantly working to provide it to the rest of the cells. Right, fasting versus feasting, again, looking here at weight gain and weight loss, you're just kind of going to understand that when you eat more than you need, you're going to get weight gain. And again, when you eat less than you need, you're going to be concerned with that weight loss. And weight loss, we'll see here in a minute, done at a slow pace is excellent. Okay. Storing our energy, as I said, when we store our fat, it's going to store as triglycerides in that extra fat. Calculating our energy requirement. So look at this on your own time, but basically you're going to see that as throughout the different ages, we need some different levels of physical activity or energy requirements to make our bodies grow. For our kids, for instance, they're literally growing, right? For us as adults, we're not going to grow 5 more inches, right? We've hit our max, we're done. For children, they're still in this growth process. And so for them, their body is going to go through a lot more chemical reactions and a lot more going on. It needs more energy to make those processing of that growth happen. All right, so what should we be doing with physical activity? We've mentioned before, we'll mention it again. I'm a big believer in this. So we all should be physically active. And the numbers have really continued to go up in how much or how many minutes per day or week we should be doing. And we know we should be doing about 150 minutes per week, right? However you want to break that down. As I shared in my bio, I am a gerontologist, which means that I have a degree in the study of aging. And something that I would say is if you ask me, like, what is more important? Should I have, like, be really, really strict about my diet? Or should I incorporate, kind of like exercise into my lifestyle? I'm going to say that, exercise is crucial to healthy aging. It is. It's crucial to healthy aging. To age well, you need to have physical activity. I really am a big believer that if you exercise 150 minutes a week, if you're doing a good job at that, you can have your cheesecake occasionally. You can have your sweets occasionally. I'm not a believer in omitting all things that you want, because then it kind of bums you out, right? It's kind of depressing, right? If you have some favorite foods and you can never have them. I think it's unrealistic of us to think that in our moments of weakness, we're not going to go for what we really like. But I think if you do physical activity, you'll be able to manage your weight then, right? So I'm a big believer in making sure that we get this activity into our lifestyle. All right. So what causes our body shape? Is it really genetics? Or is it more our lifestyle choices or our, the choices that we make and what we eat and our exercise? And it's really a combination of both. As I mentioned, all of us have a predisposition genetically to be a certain size. That's just the way it is, right? If you have extremely tall parents, tall, slender parents maybe, there's a good chance you're going to be tall and slender, okay? That's just genetically the way that we work. And so we're all predisposed to a certain shape, or even some people have you ever met people that you just like, you're really jealous, or you get kind of mad because they're super slender and they eat anything they want and they never gain a pound, right? That's genetics. A lot of that is just a very high metabolism rate, being able to do that genetically. It will catch up with them as they age. But understand, so our genetics account for a part of our body shape. However, our lifestyle choices, which are what foods do you eat? How much of those foods do you eat? Do you incorporate exercise or physical activity into your life? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do things that are harmful to your body, right? Those are lifestyle choices, and those you and I have control over. And so that's where I'm going to say we need to make some really good choices, right? Because if you're predisposed, or your body is predisposed to being slender, but you make all of those lifestyle choices, you smoke, you drink, you do no physical activity, you consume twice the number of calories you should per day, that is going to catch up with you, right? It's going to have some negative health consequences for you and weight gain. Right, leptin, you can kind of read about this particular enzyme that's really kind of useful in your brain, telling your body to gain or lose weight. All right, so what we call the weight cycling, right? This is, many of my students will tell me things like, I've tried so many diets, or I'm so frustrated because nothing works. And this is one of the reasons why. So we start a dieting, routine, and then basically it reduces our calories, right? And then we get these hunger cravings. We're not used to that calories. And then what happens is we get the hunger, and then we return to binge eating or over consuming, and then we feel really guilty about our overeating, and we're really depressed and bummed about it, and we're like, okay, no, this next time I'm going to try a different diet, and I'm really going to do it this time. And it's frustrating because we go through this cycle, or nothing works, or it works for 3 months, 6 months, or even a year, and then we're back to having some real concerns about our excess weight and our health consequences. So this is the dieting cycle that we really want to break. So weight management program. So what should we do, right? I've known people who have used particular diets, systems, and they've been successful at it. But in general, this is kind of what all of us can do to start to look at our weight, balance our intake and outtake. Okay, what that means is, right, if we're supposed to consume 2,500 calories per day, then that's what we want to consume. You do want to start figuring out how to get those calories, right? And the correct output for that. right? Or if you're going to incorporate exercise or physical activity into your, routine, your weight management program, then we need a few more extra calories for that, right? In general, all of us probably could cut down on our calories. And this is mainly our empty calories, right? The ones that we get from our candy and our sugar or sodas, all of that provide no nutrients, but they give us the numbers, the calories. Don't get too hungry. This again is people will tell me things like, well, I'm just eating 2 meals a day. I'm not a fan of that. Your body is hurting if it's eating 2 meals a day. It needs more than that. We just talked about all the energy your body needs to just breathe, okay? And so a lot of times, like say, I'm not gonna have dinner for 4 more hours, right? Sometimes at 2 hours in between that 4-hour span, I'll think, I'm not really hungry, but I'm going to go ahead and grab an apricot, or I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of these crackers or some pretzels or something that's, a snack, right? Because even though I'm not hungry, my body is constantly needing that. And, going your 4 or 5 hours until your next meal is too long. It is. And so don't get too hungry where you say, okay, I only eat 2 meals a day. So, by the time dinner comes, I am famished. I am so hungry. Because what do? You overeat. And what's happening is that our stomach grows and shrinks according to our eating habits. So if you are used to sitting down and consuming 900 calories in one meal, your stomach is used to large size meals. So the next meal, when you go to have 400 calories, all of a sudden your stomach is like, I'm kind of hungry still because I'm used to you filling me up. But what happens is as we continue to reduce that calorie intake, your stomach will shrink to a normal, or what we'd say is a healthier size for your stomach. The same way that people who are starving in other parts of the country, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Even in our country, we have people that are starving. Their stomach is very small. So if someone were to feed them a large meal, especially a high fat meal, their stomach could not digest it because their stomach has no room to put the food because it has shrunk so much because of starvation. So our stomach adjusts. Increase your activity. This is where I'm a big believer, okay? As I said, I really think exercise is the key to healthy aging, and I don't think it, I know it from research, right? That's just what's been proven over and over again. Lifestyle choices that are healthy for us, not smoking, not drinking excessively, I should say, and exercising will lead to your joints, to your heart, warding off so many different diseases. And so increase your physical activity, whatever works for you. I am not into the gym. I don't like going to the gym. It's just not a fun thing for me. And for time's sake, I just kind of don't have time to get there and get back. However, I have equipment at home that I use because just for me, I need to, it's my downtime. And so if I'm going to do the treadmill for an hour, then I'm going to watch a program, or that's like my entertainment time as I am working out time. So that works for me. My son goes to the gym 6 days a week, right? That works for him. And so whatever works for you, if you'd want to play soccer or play something, then you need to do that, but increase your activity. Ketosis. So ketosis is basically when your body is burning fat instead of carbs. We said 50% of your, kcal should come from carbs. And I know the keto diet is really kind of big right now. And so basically this is when we have a very low kcal diet and from our carbs. And, my thing is I'm a believer in long-term research. I'm a scientist. And so for me, before I would ever endorse any diets, I'm going to say you need to show me the long-term research which shows the effect that these diets have on individuals 10 years from now. Because if you can't show me that, then I really don't want to endorse something, because I would prefer for you to just manage your weight in the ways that we just kind of talked about, which is managing your intake and your outtake, increasing your physical activity, right? Losing the empty calories, right? And making better healthier lifestyle choices, right? So I'm not saying that keto doesn't work. I am saying that I think you need to always look into what long-term ramifications might this have on my kidneys, because your organs are the ones that are going to end up processing your fat here, the excess fat in your diet. You're increasing fats instead of carbs in this keto diet. And so, just be aware of that. Right, weight management, behavior modification. This is where I'm a big believer, behavior modification. And for a lot of you who have talked to me about, some of the struggles with dieting and some of the challenges that you have, for instance, you like to graze, you're a grazer instead of sitting down for full meals, or you like your midnight snacks, or you're a comfort food eater. This is where we talk about what we call behavior modification. This is what, let's look at this here. So understanding what's your triggers, what triggers you. So here we have, let's say that somebody realizes that, you know what, I love to eat and snack when I'm watching TV. And I realize that when I do that, I'm eating and consuming, first of all, not so healthy foods and way more than I need. This is true. Research shows that if you eat your meal or food while watching your phone, your iPad, your Mac, your TV, screen time, if you eat while watching, you consume more calories or more food than if you eat while not watching a screen. That's research, proven research, okay? So we know that. But if you realize that when you sit down to eat in front of the television, you have your potato chips and your food that's not healthy, the way you can modify the behavior is what happens with that. Then you feel bummed, right? You're like, I've gained weight and I feel bummed, and I don't feel so good either when we eat lots of foods like that. But I feel bad and guilty and all that, right? But if we know that we do like to eat and watch TV or screen time, pick your snack ahead of time and only pick a certain amount. So for instance, my daughter and my youngest and I, she's still at home. I want to try to enjoy time with her. We have movie nights a lot. And so what we will do is we like popcorn, right? Popcorn has good fiber. And we eat I think it's Orville Redenbacher's Naturals popcorn. And so that's the kind that we like. And so we will pop a bag of popcorn and we will portion it out for us, and then usually another one of my foster kids or exchange student kids or somebody else, my house is full of kids, will share with us. And so we each get our bowl. And we know, like, this is how much we get. We don't get to go pop into the bag, right? And so we know this is our portion size. We get to sit down, enjoy our popcorn with our family and friends, and have a good experience. And then what happens is we feel good about that. We knew, okay, and it is our treat. That is our snack. That's our dessert for the night, if you will, when we have our popcorn with our movie. And so understanding what triggers you. If you're a grazer, that's a tough one, because grazing is not good dentally. It's not good for your teeth, because you tend to be consistently putting sugar or putting foods onto your teeth if you graze throughout the day. Also, you tend to, get your calories from unhealthy sources, from not the best food. So figure out how to make yourself sit down for at least 2 full meals, and then have other snacks in your grazing that aren't so unhealthy for you. All right. Approaches to lose weight. So, like I said, losing weight, we want to, some of us want to do, but we want to do it at a slow, steady pace. When somebody says to me, I lost 10 pounds last week, I'm kind of concerned about that, because research shows that when you lose a lot of weight very fast, you tend to put it back on very fast. However, when we lose about 2 pounds a week and continue that process, right? So, in a month, you're looking at 8 pounds maybe that you've lost. Okay, good. And then you're looking at the next month, right? For some of us, when we start to exercise or we do something different in our diet, what we're going to notice is we're not always going to notice that the pounds have shaved off or we've lost it, but we notice a difference in where the weight is. For instance, a lot of women will say things to me like, oh, I noticed that I started exercising and doing these different, routines, and oh my gosh, I noticed my waist has shrunk, by like an inch or half an inch, right? Now, it doesn't mean you might not still be proportionally getting that weight in your hips or in other areas, but it's helping the waist, which we said is important. It's important that we not have that visceral fat around the middle or the apple, right? So slow and steady wins the race here. Losing a 0.5 pound to 2 pounds per week is ideal. Again, you can look at this slide to look at some of the various diets, programmed, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig's Nutrisystem. You know, there's pros and cons to all of these different systems. I really do think all of us can manage if we start to do what we just saw, which is incorporate those activities. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not going to lie to you and tell you it is easy, because it is so not easy. It's not. And this is why I think people get frustrated, is because they realize that I learned I should cook this food or I should eat this way, but like I go back to my old habits of eating fast food, or I'm so busy, you know, and I want you to give yourself a break, because these type of behavior modifications or behavior changes, like if you say, I'm only going to eat fast food twice a week and I'm going to cook 5 days a week, it's going to take a while for you to implement that successfully, because you're changing something you've done differently for a long time. So give yourself a break. Don't be frustrated if after a month you're like, oh man, I only cooked 3 days this week and I ate fast food 4 days. And that's okay. Continue in your striving to reduce the fast food to 2 days a week. Don't be mad at yourself. Don't knock yourself down. Just say, okay, well, I'm better than I used to be, right? And so continue, because it's like we have to teach ourselves, this is what you need to do. We forget. Sometimes we just like, oh man, this was the night I was supposed to cook and I picked up food on the way home. We forget. It's like training yourself to do something new. So that's what you're going to be doing, is training yourself to exercise, right? Set your goal of 3 days a week, and it's like, I only went once. Okay, so we shoot for twice next week. We keep it up. That's what you have to have, or else it's just too frustrating. Meal replacements, you know, for some individuals, trying to do the weight management on their own is just too challenging. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of commitment, a lot of pre-planning. And so for them, meal replacements, meaning the packaged foods you buy from Jenny Craig or from other places, and that say, you know, the shakes that are like, this has the calories of a full meal, instead of you either getting your fast food or cooking your food, which you will overeat or consume too many calories. So in those cases, you may want to try this. My concern is there's a lot of sodium in some of this, and you know, there's not always kind of the healthy foods, and you can't pay for it for the rest of your life. I would think most of us can't. But to get you started and being disciplined, this may be a good way to get started. Right, so what happens when we have really more or less obese patients that we are concerned about some health consequences of that obesity? We may recommend what we call a bariatric weight loss surgery. And most of us are familiar with a gastric bypass. So many patients go through a gastric bypass surgery, and basically what we're doing is, if you see the slide here, we're going to restrict the size of the stomach, and remember, remember the small intestine is the part, that 20 feet is that part of our stomach that absorbs our nutrients. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shave a part off, or we're going to bypass, think of a freeway overpass. We're going to bypass some of that small intestine, because if we can absorb the food, then we're not going to get the calories or the nutrients from the food, right? And so we're going to do this in order to kind of shrink the stomach. Now, patients that go through gastric bypass surgery, wow, it takes, first of all, it takes a lot to be approved for this surgery, because you have to have an extreme amount of discipline after the surgery. Your stomach has shrunk, right? So you can only consume small amounts of food, and a lot to start off with, they're usually in liquid form or not in a solid base. And you have to be very, very regimented about your intake after the surgery. But it's dramatic. The changes in a person will be dramatic with gastric bypass surgery. And our goal here is to hope that you're teachable, because we're going to train you on how to eat and consume calories for the rest of your life after the surgery to be in a healthier weight category. So that is gastric bypass surgery. Again, kudos to patients, or high five to those who really go through this and can stick with that discipline. All right, and then go through the slides on your own time, and hopefully you can answer those prompts or those questions to help reinforce what we've just learned. So I will then see you for chapter number 8.